On this week in sales, we're going to be taking a look at selling behaviors that kill deals, virtual sales recruiting, Apple pushing back on working remotely, and much, much more. My name is Barron. I'm the founder of salesman.org, and joining me, the co-host of this train that is just powering through the sales community right now, the legend, Victor Antonio. How's it going, sir?
Dude, I was trying to get a train visual going here, man. I'm doing good. Well, I've been up since 3 o'clock this morning. So it's now, since we're recording on typically 8 hours, I just couldn't sleep, man. One of the things I started doing, and I didn't do it last night, is writing down things I need to do the next day before I get to bed. And I noticed that it helped me sleep. I didn't do it last night, and sure enough, my brain was active, man. How are you doing on your side?
I was up at 3 o'clock, and you just totally took the wind out of my story here, because I was up at 3 o'clock. I couldn't sleep either, because my partner elbows me in the ribs at 3 o'clock in the morning and goes, I just heard a noise outside.
Wait a minute. Now, that's already more dramatic than mine.
let me just paint a picture here. The last time that my partner thought that there was an issue, there was someone coming like casing the house and stuff like that, was that there was lights every 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. There was lights. We live in a cul-de-sac, and so the lights. Someone was spinning around, and the lights going through the window and waking my missus up. And there was like weird noises, and there was like rattling on the back of what turned out to be a pickup truck. Now I waited up, found out who it was. It was the milkman. So the last time that I was woken up that we're being robbed was the milkman just coming around doing his deliveries. So I'm a little hesitant to get out of bed and suss what's going on. Anyway, Emily wakes up, elbowing me. She's like, right, I'm not happy about this. As in, I've got to go do something about it now. The dog's downstairs, the dog's awake. So I'm like, okay, maybe there is something. So I've got this. I shouldn't maybe say this in case it ever happens, but this is why people, security guards, for example, carry big mag lights, because if you beat the heck out of someone with it, you can just say, I just had it with me. It's not an offensive weapon. If you pick up a weapon and then go and attack someone with it, you can be, in the UK anyway, you can be done for using more force than what's needed for the situation. So I pick up my mag light. I'm going downstairs. I've got it on my shoulder like a copper would be, ready to just whack someone on the head. Turn on the lights. We've got floodlights that we can turn on around all the house. And there's no one there. There's no noises. Nothing's going on. And so I'm still only 50% believing that there was actually a noise. It's only that the dog confirmed it. So, Victor Antonio, I'm frigging tired, my friend. So both of us, I've got a cup of green tea here. I'm sure you've had a coffee to get rocking and rolling today. I'm sure we'll still put on a great show, right?
So, hey, we're going to put on a great show, but what do you think it was? You think it was a what?
Probably fox. We've got tons of foxes where we are.
Okay.
My partner said it sounded like someone had jumped on the bin, and if a creature or a human was trying to get from one garden to the next, they'd probably climb on the bins to get over. So it's probably a fox.
You know, it's funny because we're backed up into a 40-acre farm, not ours. We're just backed up into it. And there's a time during the year, and I think it's around February, March, where foxes just go into mating season. Have you ever heard foxes during mating season? If not, I think you should go on YouTube and listen to that video and that screeching sound. It is, the dogs go nuts, man. It's just not tolerable, man. So anyway, just reminded me of that. But anyway, well, I digress. Let's get into this week in sales.
Let's get into some sales news. And this is the LinkedIn State of Sales Report 2021. And we'll link to this in everything else that we talk about in the show notes of this episode over at thisweekinsales.com. And there's a few pointers here I think that may be useful for the audience, and we'll discuss. There's a few data points. Unfortunately, and this makes the data less useful than what it could be, that all the data points are around 50%. 50% this, 50% this. So it's difficult to have a divergent opinion on this. So we'll get into the points, and we can perhaps discuss that as well. But the first one is 50% of buyers say that salespeople and themselves working remotely has made the purchasing process easier. Is that because, Victor, they've not got salespeople pestering them and that they can just buy in their own time with their own process now?
Yeah, that's simple. I mean, it's right down the middle, right? So I think, yeah. How's that for an easy answer? Yes. Yes.
And this is the problem. If it was 87% of buyers said that this makes buying easier, then we know the answer. We should push towards that. But at 50, it's kind of up in the air.
Yeah, it's like, which way do you want to go on that one? So that's good. Okay.
So as I said, I think some of this data will diverge over time, and we'll see these swing one way more or the other. So a few other pointers here, and these came in from buyers themselves specifically. Buyers also identified a number of behaviors from sellers that were immediate deal killers, right?
Uh-oh, it's going to get good, people. It's going to get good. Lean in.
So I'll run through these three, and then we can dissect them. 48% of buyers said delivering misleading information about a product, its price, etc. 44% of buyers said not understanding my company and its needs. 43% not understanding their own product or service. So my question to you, Victor, is right now in 2021, as we record this episode of This Week in Sales, is the problem in the sales industry that we're trying to fix as well, we're trying to help with this, is the problem that there's a lack of sales skill, product knowledge, or is it what we kind of talk about almost every week, that we need more AI, we need more technology, and we need problem solving by code?
Well, I told you before we started this that I'm car shopping right now, right? I visited three dealers. All three sales guys were horrible. Like, they didn't even ask us, like, why that car? Why did you come in to look at that specific car? Not one. Like, we walked in, we wanted to look at the Volvo X, I think it's the XC40 or CX40, whatever the letters are. We said that one right there. No question was there, like, well, why that one? Nothing like that. They just kind of said, okay, like, duh, and just give us the keys, give us your license, and then you can go take it for a test drive. Went to the next one, which was the VW. We want to look at the Tiguan, same thing. Next one, Mazda, want to look at that one, same thing. And the only reason we're looking at a second different car, Mazda, is because I said, hey, what's that one over there? Because it was like an XC5, and I said, what's this over here? That's an XC30. I said, well, that one looks interesting. Not at any moment did they say, why now? Why this? Not once. So, yeah.
Dude,
you can give, by the way, you can give an idiot tools. It'll just make him an idiot with tools, right?
that is my, like, kind of almost like a mission statement at this point.
Dude,
you can't.
I feel your angst.
It's painful. So we're doing this webinar. We're doing it weekly now. If you head over to salesman.org/webinar, you'll find it there. If you're interested, get signed up to it. It's a live webinar. And the whole, like, first 15%, 20% of the webinar is that a lot of salespeople are failing, and it's not necessarily their fault. They've not been told what to do. They've been given a quota. They've not even had decent product training. At the minimum, your company should be giving you that, and perhaps you take the initiative and do sales training, negotiation training, all the mindset stuff yourself or on the side in your own time, because that translates to any sales role, right? Any business role in the future. That's valuable to just know in general. But the product training, at the very minimum, should be done by the company, because who else can do product training as well as the company producing and shipping the products?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm in the car with the guy, right? This is the Mazda one, the one we're leading towards. And so the guy, he spews off a couple of gibberish points. He thought I wasn't listening, and he says, da-da-da-da-da, and he says something like and thought it was a VRS, a something. I go, what's a VRS? And he literally had to try to remember what it was. Like, oh, that stands for, variability, something. I go, okay, what does that mean? And he couldn't answer the question. He couldn't answer the question. He was just spewing data, but couldn't answer the question. So I love this. The first one, that 48% delivering misleading information about the product, and the last one, not understanding their own product. That's huge. And that's what you're talking about. Where's the product training?
We'll come on to this in a report that towards the end of the show of people leaving sales, time in sales jobs, because all of that effective is important, right? Because it just could be that coincidentally the reps, the car salespeople that you dealt with, it was the first week on the job. Now, I'm gonna go with your statement right here at the end. Here, it's shitty salespeople who haven't been trained. Those are your words in our notes. I agree with you 100%. It's shitty people who haven't been trained. Okay, so on that point, then, Victor.
Yes, sir.
I know the answer to this, but I just want to drill it in for the audience. Whose responsibility is it for salespeople listening right now who are going, you're talking about me? I'm trying really hard, but I don't have the skills and the knowledge. Whose responsibility is it to get that knowledge into you?
I used to have a real hard-ass statement. So this is Victor, growing with wisdom and just being more reflective of my answers. And that is, I would immediately say the salesperson is ultimately responsible for their own training. But the thing is, you and I came from a product-centric type of market, right? You're in the medical industry, I came from telecom, where we need like product managers to really walk us through what this thing can do, right? Because we sometimes don't understand what we're about to sell. So I think there's equal responsibility. At the end of the day, the salesperson is responsible. But But when we talk about onboarding people, that's where the product managers have to kick in and give them great training.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to the next topic, talking about salespeople going from one job to another. Tell us about this virtual recruiter.
So, you know me, I'm always on the lookout for AI, just cool AI stuff. This one, I'm half-heartedly wanting to talk about it because I know how you feel about some of this stuff. But I thought I'd say, you know what, let's kind of go somewhere different. There's a company called, and I believe the pronunciation is Celential. Now see, that right there, like Celential, even if it was Celential, I mean, already that bothers me. Anyway, spelled Celential. Celential.ai appoints a vice president of AI and sales, expands its AI-powered, listen carefully, virtual recruiter service to sales recruiting. Whoa. So now we have AI about to do some recruiting here. So if you got, as Will would say, shitty salespeople, unquote, then maybe Celential is your answer. So Celential is like a top of the funnel type of company where it develops an unparalleled deep understanding of candidates' background using machine learning, natural language processing, and data science. They say our virtual recruiter, they have a virtual recruiter, sends out highly individualized emails to high potential clients on behalf of the hiring manager, creates automatic follow-ups based on accurate sentiment analysis, which is basically what the tone of the message is. What would take recruiters hours now is done in a fraction of the time, and rolled out to scale also. So this is just, I put a little note here for myself to remember, this is like HR prospecting. It's like a prospect to be just practiced. So, I mean, what do you think of that? So like a virtual recruiter.
This makes more sense to me than using the same technology in a sales role where you reach out to buyers. Because if you are essentially selling a decent job, you can, as a recruiter, to probably 50 salespeople that you've just dug up on LinkedIn, they're probably going to reply to it. Versus if I'm trying to sell a product, it doesn't matter what that product is, the buyer probably has more resistance, a bigger barrier for them to accept a call or move to like the first steps of the sales process. So they can probably get away with it in HR or get away with it in recruitment to send a bit more, because it's going to be more spammy than a handwritten note. It has to be, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think this is a better fit for this kind of technology.
So, okay. So do you get, by any chance, job offers off of LinkedIn?
I did, but then I turned off a load of notifications and opt-ins and stuff on LinkedIn, and basically just blocked anyone from offering me jobs. So I did at one point, and now it's I
need to do that. Off. Well, I need to do that because I get these job offers, and I'm like, have you even looked at my background? You know what I mean? I'm like, have you looked at my background? It would tell you that this is not a fit. So I'm wondering also, there's an application called crystalknows.ai. That's the website, Crystal Knows. Are you familiar with that one?
I am.
Crystal
Terrible
Knows.
Name. It just reminds me of like a meth addict or something.
Yeah, Crystal Meth Knows. Crystal Knows basically is you can use the application on LinkedIn and it will go through a person's profile and give you some type of, almost like a disc assessment via LinkedIn. And so I can see how like that type of data tied in with maybe somebody's background that they pull off of, LinkedIn and maybe kind of structure some type of response, and some phrasing. So I can see where this actually, again, they're top of the funnel. And by the way, on their website, they actually have good case studies of where they've been very successful in finding new recruits. So maybe worth looking at. Horrible name, Celential.ai. I would check them out.
For sure.
If you're looking for people, yeah.
Well, if you're looking at changing jobs, well, this is a report from, the data is on bdaily.co.uk, talking about remote working, pushing salespeople away from their jobs. It's entitled Remote Working Has Pushed Salespeople Away. What is the solution? So this is a survey of more than 2,000 revenue leaders across the US, Canada, France, and Germany. And it states 58% of sales decision makers have reported that salespeople have departed their teams at higher rates than normal over the past 12 months. Now,
no, that's surprising, isn't it, Will?
I don't know if it's surprising. It feels like it needs another 7 points to caveat it, because have they sacked a load of people because no one's buying product, so they're trying to reduce their workforce? In which case, clearly you're going to have salespeople departing their company. They're not saying departed is a bit of an ambiguous term. Perhaps they should have be more specific of no longer work there, having been let go.
Right.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, we don't know what departed means. Were they fired, or did they leave on their own volition, or maybe put on temporary? What's the word? Nobody likes not downsize. You can't say fired. They've been
furloughed.
Put on leave, or Yeah, furloughed is probably a nicer phrase. Yeah, okay.
And then there's a few points on this as well. Salespeople choosing to depart teams is at a higher rate of 58%. And the top 3 challenges to achieving sales goals are the lack of in-person meetings, which is 33% of salespeople reporting this, and internal meetings as well. I don't really understand what that means. And budget constraints, that's a bit of a cop-out at 28%. And a lack of certainty in pipeline and forecasting projections. This to me just says that salespeople are having a bit of a rough ride at the moment.
I think so. And by the way, none of these are new issues, right? Especially certainty in pipeline and forecasting projection. Nothing new here. But I'm wondering, it still feels a little weird out there to me. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? In the market space, it still feels a little weird. Like, I think people are just trying things to see what kind of works, but nobody's really sure what's working right now. How do you feel about that?
I agree. I think we're in a massive inflection point. I think we talk, right, we've been talking, this is the 33rd episode of this show. So bar like missing a few and me doing a few of my own, say we've almost been doing this for a year, by the time we take off Christmas and stuff. Over the past 12 months, I feel like we talk about almost the same things every single week of the buyers engaging further along the buying cycle. Salespeople either need to produce content or have great marketing teams that give them content that allow them to get in the buying cycle earlier on. AI is coming along and giving more intelligent insights at certain points of the sales process. There's a divergence in some sales teams are getting pushed to use AI and technology to spam, and others are using it to perhaps do more intelligent one-to-one outreach. And there's a debate as to which one of that will win over the long term. I don't feel like what we've said over the past 12 months, what we've chatted about, Victor, has changed. I feel like it's just accelerated. And clearly we've just gone through a wide global pandemic, so things are going to accelerate. But I feel like even though the same issues are there that probably been there for the past 30, 40 years, everything's now just, I feel like there's almost a point where you could light, and all the political stuff going on in the States and stuff as well over the past 12 months, and all the furlough shenanigans over here in the UK, is all kinds of stuff, right? I feel like there's almost like points where you could just light a match and a lot of the sales industry would just die off in an instant.
Yeah. What do you mean by when you say accelerate? I kind of didn't get what you meant by that.
So I
you
feel
said
like
it's changing, but it's accelerating.
So, for example, millennials aging up into buying roles. So I'm a buyer. We have a small budget each month that I spend on technology and tools and stuff. But I'm getting more and more people reach out to me to try and sell me stuff, right? 3 years ago, there would be less millennials in buying roles. Now, with COVID, people are retiring early, people are changing jobs, companies are getting downsized, layers have been taken out. So all of a sudden, there's way more millennials in buying roles proportionally than there was 3 years ago. So that's an acceleration of perhaps you could get away with cold calling 98% of the market 3 years ago. Millennials are less likely to pick up the phone on a cold call, less likely to be able to get their number in the first place. Most of them don't have office phones. So now it didn't go 98% cold calling effectiveness, 96, 95. It went from 98 to I'm making up these numbers obviously, but it went from 98 to 30 in the course of 12 months, as opposed to a more linear approach to this, or a more linear transition would have spread this out longer.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I mean, it just feels weird out there right now. And I think people are trying to figure it out. Like even companies, I'm sure, like this whole thing about wrestling with remote versus non-remote, I think is still that struggle of what's best.
What is best? Give us the answers.
I don't know what's best, but are you done with this one? Because I can jump to the next one and I can get a hint at what's going on.
Let's do it.
All right, so Apple now pushes back on remote work. Oh, now it gets juicy because I'm liking this actually. See, because I am starting to form an opinion now.
Oh, wow.
On remote. Just the way you said, wow, finally forming an opinion.
That's
the way you meant that. The tone in your voice when you said, wow.
Condescending then. I didn't mean
totally
it to.
Condescending. But anyway, here's an article by Riva Gold. I saw this over at LinkedIn this morning. It says, Apple pushes back on remote work. And the reason that this one, I'll read the article, the snippet here, but the reaction to this article has been almost violent. So let me read the article first, and then let's talk about the response. Apple remains committed to requiring most employees to work in the office at least 3 days a week from September, despite staff opposition. Apple employees have written a letter asking for the policy to be reversed, giving all teams the option to work remotely. Quote, we believe that in-person collaboration is essential to our culture and our future, said Senior Vice President, said in a video recording to, I guess it's a magazine or a channel called The Verge. Any new remote positions will require executive approval. Why do you think, and then the question was, what do you think of Apple's hybrid policy? And this is over on LinkedIn. What's interesting is that the gentleman over who's the CEO of Connect and Sell, Christopher Beal, basically flamed this, saying they're on the wrong side of history, right? And again, everybody should just study some Buddhism once in a while. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not about this or that. Usually the answer lies somewhere in the middle in moderation. And I think what Apple is saying here is that, okay, spend at least 3 days in the office. I mean, what a change from over a year ago. Mm-hmm. That would have been celebrated a year ago. Now it's like, well, I don't know. I just don't know if I want to go back. And I really believe that some companies, this is why you just can't black and white things. Some companies need to be in person to create, as Apple's pointing out, this collaborative thing. Especially when you're in a market where being creative with tools to stay ahead is your competitive advantage. So I am with Apple on this. I think Apple is actually being very generous with this policy. Yep. So I'm taking Apple's side on this one.
I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to say that I trust the opinions and probably internal data on what is the most valuable company in the world, where like probably a third of all Western civilization has their product as at least in their pocket, if not on their wrist, if not in their ears, if not on their desk. They've probably got some good data that working in an office environment is effective. I don't think they're making these decisions on a whim.
No, and we've been on enough virtual conversation and virtual calls, especially when you're doing like your workshops or the webinars that you're doing every week, right? You can tell when some people, if you have a manageable amount of people you can look at, when some people are tuned in and when some people are tuned out. The distractions, the multitasking that go on remotely would ruin the creative process of, like, say, we stick 5 people in a room with no windows. We'd be focused on creating things. 5 people on a virtual conference, it just doesn't work. And so I think the folks on LinkedIn who were flaming this article were not really giving it the thought, that whole process about what are they trying to accomplish. If we're just doing rote, basic work, then yeah, of course, we can do remote. But
and don't forget here, Apple isn't just a disgusting 70s concrete building their offices, right? We're talking about the Apple campus here. It's a phenomenal facility,
Great point.
Just worldwide as a location to spend time. Never mind to work there. You're probably going in your 3 days a week, and this is going to be somewhat stereotypical of like the Silicon Valley life, but you're probably going in, getting a nice smoothie in the morning, having a chill on some weird beanbag chair, doing your design work, changing, revolutionizing computing as we know it, putting devices in people's pockets all over the world. And then having a game of ping pong or pool or whatever in the afternoon and getting your meals paid for and all this kind of stuff. That's not the average company that we're talking about here who are doing kind of cold calling from a boiler room where they could probably do it at home just as effectively, if not more effectively, from the kitchen table.
And that's a great point. And by the way, they don't talk about what that means to be in the office for 3 days. Does that mean I come in for a couple hours after I get my smoothie, then jump in? Because maybe just being touch base with your team. And so, anyway, I was so surprised at how nasty people are getting with the Google, with Apple saying you're on the wrong side of history. It's a little dramatic. So anyway, moving on to virtual selling. This one I plucked out just for you, Will, just for you. I said virtual selling expected to be the new normal of medtech sales in 2022. Here it is. The article's over at medtechdrive.com. Some say that vaccines will return sales strategies back to normal. However, evidence shows that many providers will continue to prefer virtual interactions. A survey by the Bain & Company shows that this preference is not only becoming more common, even more so in the post-COVID-19 world. 47% of physicians who preferred in-person visits now strongly prefer virtual engagement. 3 out of 5 technicians believe this trend should continue. What do you think of that one, Will? I had to come to you on that one.
So let's talk about very specifically what I used to sell. And I've got one right here. This was acquired privately, was not acquired from the company van that I sold for previously. And this is an endoscope. This goes inside a patient, inside their abdomen, and there's a camera goes on the end that goes to a big monitor, and the surgeon can do essentially keyhole surgery about opening up the patient's abdomen.
By the way, can we just pause for a second?
Sure.
Can we just pause for an important second here? Okay, I just brought up this topic of medical sales and whether they should be in or out of office, and then you just like nothing, pull out an endoscope from underneath your chair.
Should we see? Should we play the What's Under Will's chair game? Should we see what else is under here?
Yeah, because I'm like, people are listening to this and go, "Did he
poker set?"
Okay, so just to let you know, we didn't plan this endoscope.
A game like joystick for playing Street Fighter with.
Street Fighter. Okay.
We have. This is a random one. These are some targets for a BB gun, an air rifle. I think we're getting to what else is left now. We have this weird device covered in crap that is used for editing videos. So it has multiple buttons that can be assigned and a jog wheel there. And I think, we have, I'll give him a plug. We have Daniel Disney's new book, The Ultimate LinkedIn Sales Guide, from when I recorded with him not too long ago. I'll stick that on the desk there and give young Daniel's book a plug. There's probably tons of other crap here as well, but yeah. I don't know why it's under there. It's just with stuff. This room is just full of just stuff.
By the way, if you're listening to this on audio, please run over and watch this video. And you're going to see Will pull out some crap from underneath this chair. That was not planned. But anyway, back to this, because people are going to think we planned the whole endoscope thing. So, we did not. He just pulled it out.
So the reason I brought this out, and I was showing you the point of it is, it's very tactile, it's very hands-on. When the camera's being attached, and there's different, for example, here, this unscrews in multiple ways, different adapters. So this scope itself has 3 adapters on it. So depending on your camera system, you have a light cable that goes in, you have a camera stack, you have the scope. So it'd be very difficult for me to do a camera system demonstration without being in the room with the surgeon. If I had a nurse hold up an iPad with me trying to zoom into the room and describe things, explain things, I'm sure it physically could be done, but the surgeon's not going to like it because this equipment's being used on a patient in real time, and they don't typically have the facilities and the nursing staff and even like an engineering staff to have multiple camera systems set up just in case something goes wrong with a demonstration here or we need to switch back to the old systems. So the point of all that is that I feel very strongly that a lot of medical device specific sales roles, you will have to have a salesperson in the room, because you're not just selling, you're also training the staff and the surgeon on the equipment as the demonstration goes on, and you're there to press buttons when things go wrong and someone presses the wrong thing, the lights go off and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I agree.
Some products like orthopedic products, if you break your arm and you have to have a plate in it or some screws, you can just send a tray of them over. The surgeon will like the feel of them. They'll choose one or the other. Price is a massive factor there. Perhaps that could be done remotely. Perhaps that could be done with a phone call beforehand, some literature, some video content, some multimedia content, and then can I follow up after the fact? But there is a lot of medical devices that will be very difficult to sell into that environment without the support of someone being in there. And whether we call them salespeople or whether we call them, product experts, whatever, we want to kind of rephrase it to take some of that sales edge off things. It's going to be difficult to provide a service of getting these products into places where they need to be so that they can improve the quality of lives for the surgeons and patients without people physically in the room.
Yeah, you almost have to touch the stuff. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm very tactile, and so I like the endoscope, you could show it to me on video, but I want to kind of touch it. We've all had that experience where we order something from Amazon. When we get it, we're like, that's not what I ordered. You know what I mean? I didn't think it was going to be this crappy. And so, by the way, that reminds me of a very interesting study. They did a study with, because you know how our brain thinks this way, right? If something is heavy, our brain says quality, right? Mm-hmm. And if something is light, you're like cheap, the heuristic, rule of thumb of thinking, right? They did this interesting study, They gave the same resume to 2 groups of people, except they put one on a light clipboard and the other one on a heavy clipboard. And they said, okay, would you call this candidate back? And the one that was on the heaviest clipboard would have actually got more requests for callbacks.
Well, that's how I got
You
my
know-
first job. I literally just went around the sales manager's house and just threw a brick with my CV wrapped around through his window, and immediately got a call. He was loving it.
That's how I did. That was quick. That was good, actually. That was really good.
Well, they did this with Beats headphones, Dr. Dre's brand that was bought by Apple. Well,
Right.
they were criticized because they were just crap. It was like a branding exercise as opposed to like high quality audio components and stuff within them. But they were criticized because they were putting big steel like plates in the headphones themselves to make the headphones feel heavier.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They were
Interesting.
criticized for that.
They were also criticized. Well, Dr. Dre was criticized because he was bragging about that they're charging $300, but there was only like $15 worth of components in there, and he got nailed on that one. I remember that one, but I never heard the plate. So even that. But anyway, the point being is that when you feel something, it gives it more. I want to buy it or not want to buy it. So being in place, being there, I think is important. Again, if it's software, then it doesn't matter. But I still say being there. This is why I think we're gonna swing back. Mm-hmm. I think maybe right now we're in the 50-50 zone, but I think we're gonna move back into 80-20. 80% is gonna be face to face. 20% is gonna be virtual. And again, I'm generalizing because different industries will have different ratios, but that's kind of my feeling, my gut feeling.
I think what's going to happen is, we'll carry on the analogy of the surgeon. They're going to make a buying decision. They're going to make the wrong buying decision once. And then they're never going to do anything virtual ever again because these are $3,000 a pop, right? There's a ton of like really sophisticated glass rod lenses in this. These are $3,000 a pop. When they break, they're 1,500 quid as a flat fee to repair. A hospital would buy maybe 100 of them, depending on the size of the hospital. By the time you add in a few camera systems at 50, 60 grand a pop, probably even more now. I've not been selling medical devices for years. So you're looking at 3, 4, 500 grand. You only have to make that mistake once. And you're never going to rely on a Zoom call again, are you, to
buy something,
to do this again?
You bring up an interesting point. This has been happening recently because of the supply chain issues out there. Like, for example, did you know in the U.S. a used car is almost as expensive as a new car because they just don't have enough components to bring in new cars, right? Mm-hmm. But I found that something interesting is happening in the market, right? And this is why I think it feels weird right now because I was comfortable buying on Amazon, right? The problem is I can't find the product, so I decided to go to the mall. Like, I haven't been to a mall. It's funny when you go to a mall, it's like, wow, I haven't seen this in a while. And you go there only to find out that you're just as disappointed, if not more disappointed, because you actually made the trip there and you got to put up with all the nuisance that the folks that are there who are just nuisance. And I realized, let me go back home and just order something. At least I don't have to invest this searching for something from store to store. So I think it's weird because also the supply chain has been disruptive, and I think it's been disrupted, and I think it's hard to restart an economy. I'm talking about a global economy, and I think that's the weirdness we're feeling now. For
sure. When you're talking about, for example, chip shortages that are delaying every like semi-luxury car and luxury car from being produced because they use so many chips, it's just not going to be resolved for another 18 months. There physically are not enough fab factories creating enough silicon wafers to produce it. It's not like you can flip a switch and turn some of this back on. It physically can't ramp up. You'd have to increase capacity. And there's only like 3 or 4 companies that can make a lot of these NVIDIA chips and Apple chips and ARM chips on the whole of the planet.
The reason I totally agree with you 100% is because this weekend, I heard my sister-in-law has a new job. She's a buyer. And she buys things to put in the store, right? And they can't find enough plushies. Okay? A plushie, I guess, is a stuffed animal, right? So apparently, a lot of these people who used to produce these plushies, these stuffed animals, have gone out of business. So now the demand is so high for these plushies that they're just basically going to anywhere they can find a plushie to kind of buy, right? And I'm like, well, if you just can't restart the engine on plushies, can you imagine trying to restart the engine on a wafer factory to produce microchips? It's got to be crazy. And so weird times we're in now. But hey,
sorry, I cut you off then in what was going to be a good transition. Just
add
this final thing to it. They're in a weird time, just economically, with all the potential inflation, just printing of money. There's not enough product to fill the supply of demand. It's just weird. It's probably going to be weird for another 12 months. And I'm going to finish your transition there, Victor.
No. But you bring up something I think it's worth talking about because we're seeing the impacts of inflation here. I just finished seeing a documentary called The End of Money. And I may have mentioned it last week, but it really hit me because it's starting to hit the economy now. All this money that's being printed by the government that's not backed by anything. So The End of Money is a documentary on YouTube. Highly recommend it. It was like 7-8 years ago. And now you're really understanding what they're saying. But the inflation over here is crazy. We live in a neighborhood, I think it's an average neighborhood, where your average house is about maybe $400,000 or $500,000, right? Some people say, well, that's not average, Victor. I get that, but
Victor's balling. Victor just tried to downplay that then.
No. And so all of a sudden, like 5 houses down, the house just went on sale for $1 million. And it's not going to last a week, Will. Because everything around here is not going to last a week. It's going to be gone.
In the UK, we'll wrap up. I want to talk about the next topic. I really want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
But in the UK, house prices can't go down. So many people, your generation, have all of their wealth. I don't know if it's the same in the US. All of their wealth wrapped up in that house. And they've just been sat on it and sat on it and sat on it. That if house prices went down, well, half the nation would go under with the mortgages, and there'd be so many issues with that. That's a totally different conversation. But with your generation, some people they don't have pensions, they don't have cash in the bank. All their wealth is in houses, and so they'd be on the streets if they couldn't downsize and move on. So the housing market in the UK is a mess. So I don't know if it's the same in the US, but we're just on this. You're going to have flats in the UK soon, and there are flats in London and elsewhere, but you have small properties that are going to have to do what they do in Japan and other countries in the Asian markets, where you get a mortgage that then gets passed on to your kids because the mortgage is so large versus your income.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening here. What's happening here is that the dollar is being diluted because of all the printing that's going on. And so we got a new stimulus package that's going to pass, an infrastructure plan, and that's going to be like $6 trillion. They just dumped $2 trillion into the market. Now they're going to dump $6 trillion. Inflation. Dave Ramsey, who's a financial guy here in the U.S., I don't know if you know who he is. Yep. He was asked the question, is this a bubble or is this inflation? He goes, it's inflation. In other words, these prices aren't going back down. That's the scary part. These prices aren't going back down. So, but speaking of scary and interesting, Will, that's the best transition I have. I'll let you start this topic off because you were the initiator of this one.
Bo Burnham, Inside. I mentioned it at the end of last week's This Week in Sales. I think I framed it up as saying, along the lines of, paraphrasing, it made me feel weird. It made me feel uncomfortable. That's why I said it slightly changed me as I was watching it.
You said, I don't know how I started questioning my own existence afterwards.
So, Victor, you've watched it now. And spoiler alert, for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, it's available on Netflix. Pause. And we're going to end the show with this topic. So if you haven't already seen it, pause and come back to this after you've watched it's a comedy special with elements and twists. But Victor, what did you think of it?
So people can get it. Bo Burnham, I think is how you pronounce his name. And then it's titled Inside.
Correct.
And as soon as you said, I don't know how, I started questioning my own existence. I go, what would make Will question his own existence? Like literally. And I said, I got to watch this. Anything that makes Will go, I don't know why I'm here. Who am I? That type of thing. I got to watch. And so I'm watching it with the skeptical eye, right? And it is got to be probably the most interesting thing I have seen in a long time. I'm like watching this going, what am I looking at? Do you know what I mean? What am I looking at? So again, spoiler alert, because I'm going to reveal some. So it's a guy who's trapped. Not trapped. He's in this room. That's the way he's setting it up. And it's almost like a little over a year now, I think. He's in this room. And what makes it interesting is that obviously he's a comedian, right? He's also one heck of a musician, a piano player, right? And songwriter. And he's not afraid of technology. So he's filming this stuff, but he's creating all these cool effects. And it's almost like being stuck with the guy for a year in a room, but compressed. You know what I mean? And if you listen to the songs, there's meaning behind the song because it's very satirical, I think is the word I'm looking for. A lot of satire in there and a lot of social commentary. And there were a couple of times I go, I never looked at it that way. The way he's singing about it. And what I also loved about it, he was very self-deprecating is not the word, but he was very open. Do you know what I mean? Here's who I am type of. Yeah, it was. Anyway, when I finished it, I go, I got to watch this again. I haven't watched it for the second time, but I'm going to highly recommend this one because this is a different journey. This is a different mental journey.
So the basic premise is, and if you haven't noticed it, you'll definitely see this in the second time around. For example, in the first intro song, he refers to himself as Robert, and then when he's singing, and then when he's just talking about depression and he's just observing himself singing while he watches himself on his Mac and stuff.
That was good.
He refers to the person singing as Bo, so he has this split personality. And then in one of the songs, right in the middle, he starts, before the song, he's talking about how he's down, he's depressed. Then he goes into this like just shock of like singing and voice. And basically what he's trying to portray is that the only way he can talk about his feelings, like as a bloke, as being introspective, as being depressed during this global pandemic, as being trapped inside what is a guest house at the bottom of his massive garden and massive house kind of thing. So that's kind of set up in that way. But he's trying to say that he can only talk about these things, he can only get it out when he's being ridiculous, when he's being sarcastic and satirical in song. So there's that like split personality between him. And if you watch he's got 2 other specials on Netflix as well. And they start off just silly and immature and get more interesting as they go, and it comes to Inside, and this is clearly going to be very difficult for him to top and better. Maybe he just stops now. I would just stop. That's it. You're done. But it made me feel weird, Victor, because it made me question, like, what's the point? We're all running around like idiots, doing all this stuff, like to buy a nicer Audi, to buy a GTR, and he's brave enough, and he's making a crap load of money and producing a show, and there's an element of like, this isn't necessarily real. He's telling a story here. But he's brave enough in that context to just be like, what's the point? And he's taking the piss out of YouTubers, he's taking the piss out of Twitch streamers, he's taking the piss out of the culture that we're in, where it's all just not quite real. Everyone's putting on this facade and this fakeness.
I guess that was it. Through his songs, because I mean, he does a little bit of talking, but he does a lot of singing. It's almost like a musical, but it's not. It's because the music has the social commentary within it. And then he's analyzing things. And then again, the lyrics were so profound, simple yet profound, that you're like, what did he just say? What did he just? I had to find myself rewinding, going, let's go back again, replay that again. But I love what you're saying in terms of he was really like putting culture under a microscope, or at least giving you a perspective that maybe you didn't have. But it is just the weirdest, coolest experience. Weird, cool would be my combination for that one. Weird, cool, and intellectual, I think was fantastic.
And the production of it, and like the songs are just on Spotify. Don't just listen to the songs. Watch the Netflix video, because the production behind it, so me and you have these studios, right, in our houses. And
I mean,
his studio with just a few lights, a disco ball, and clearly it's more sophisticated than what I'm making out here. In reality, he's planned it out probably over maybe a year, maybe even 2 years. He's planned this out, but it looks, and he's got a projector, and he's doing all these epic like art house like film epic things. And me and you are like, well, oh, maybe I need to make the logo a bit brighter and change things. Like just totally unimaginative, just bullshit. Because me and you, Victor, are trying to emulate. Me and you are trying to emulate news channels on TV. We have screens, backgrounds, pretty lighting. We're sat at the desk. We've got this professional. We've both got these microphones because Joe Rogan has this microphone. The famous podcaster, that kind of thing. And he's like, F all that, screw all that. This is what an actual, truly creative person can do with the limited space that he has.
If you look at the limited space he has, the different pieces of equipment that he uses to create these different looks, if I could say that one. I mean, I found myself pausing the video going, what is he using? Like what camera, what microphone? That's the geek in us, right? And then, but you're blown away by the effects. By the way, just watch it just for the disco ball effect. The disco ball effect, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
That was so cool, wasn't it? Just in the first 30 seconds.
It was sick what he did with that. And he did some other things. You know what I like is that he did this video. He does a little music video, right? But then he showed you how he created the music video. Within the video, it was, as I'm watching this, I go, I get it. I see why Will recommended this one. So I'm gonna 10 star that baby. That's a great movie. Documentary, comedy. I don't know.
Comedy special. He brands it as a comedy special himself.
It's got to be the deepest thing I've seen in a long time. The creativity. I mean, if you can sit there and say, what are the dimensions of a successful documentary? It's got to be creative. 10. It's got to tell a story. 10. Insightful. 10. You know what I mean? It just there's so many 10s in this thing. I did not get bored.
That's why I love it. Did you notice the overlapping? Have you seen Fight Club?
Yes.
So, in Fight Club, Tyler Durden chops up film and he puts pictures of penises or whatever in it. And at the beginning of the film, you see pop up one single frames of Tyler Durden before the main protagonist realizes that Tyler Durden exists.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't notice that.
Well, Bo Burnham does it inside. I don't know if you saw it. He pops up one frame multiple times in the bottom corner as the Twitch streamer.
Oh, I saw that. I saw that.
So
I thought it was.
Yeah.
I was wondering, what is that?
So that's a reference to Fight Club.
Oh, that's why that was there. Okay, I'm gonna have to watch, because you said you've watched some videos on YouTube that explain some of the layers.
Yep.
In this actual documentary. I mean, you have to watch it. I mean, if you're listening or watching this, you got to watch it. It's a must watch. It's a must watch.
Right. Well, without that's the homework for the week for everyone listening. We'll wrap up with that. We'll tie it back to sales if I can. This dodgy transition in that I think, don't get me wrong, you had like a $6,000 camera and probably 10 grand worth of lenses and stuff. It was done to be put on Netflix. There's certain quality standards, and you have to physically use certain cameras in your production to go on Netflix as a Netflix production. So with that to one side, I feel like this is if you watch it as a salesperson and you know that a lot of the future of selling is bound to be remote, it's content creation, whether you're doing it or your marketing team doing it, you could probably replicate some of the stuff from this and get a ton of attention in the marketplace. I'm not saying do silly songs, but introspective monologues with transitions or whatever it is, there's going to be something in it for salespeople to go, oh, I can do that. My customers would enjoy that. That's going to get me attention. That's going to get me a foot in the door better than a spammy cold email.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that by saying, and what I love about it is what you mentioned already. It puts a microscope, and you used the word culture. And I think as salespeople, sometimes we have to kind of analyze what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. So it makes you philosophically reflect a little bit. And that's the big takeaway for me.
Yeah. Stop worrying about how many LinkedIn followers you've got and start worrying about how many leads you get from LinkedIn. Keep the main thing, right?
That's your line, isn't it? Keep the main thing the main thing. Are you going to get a shirt that says that? I'd get the shirt, man. It's the main thing is the main thing. You keep saying that all the time.
I definitely say it. I definitely did not make it up. But yeah, or the better one is, and this is probably where it came from, do what makes the boat go faster. I can't remember who it is. I think it's an American Olympic rower. That's all he does. Does it make the boat go faster? Yes, I'll do it. Does it make the boat go faster? Go to this event and speak. I'm not doing it. Does it make the boat go faster? I've been offered a sponsorship with Nike. No, I'm not doing it. It's distraction. Does it make the boat go faster? That's what salespeople should be thinking. Does it drive more revenue? Does it drive more revenue? Cool. Well, with that, we'll wrap up the show there. Next week, I think that could be a cool feature in Culture Corner, Victor. We give the audience some homework and we get their feedback on a documentary, a piece of music, a film or something. We'll do that in the future. That was Victor Antonio, sales legend, sales royalty. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder of salespeople.org, and that was This Week in Sales.